Dr. Devika Rangachari is an award-winning writer whose book, Queen of Ice, was on the White Raven list. And won the Neve Young Adult Book Award, and she was shortlisted for the Sahitya Academy's Bal Sahitya Puraskar. Nikhil Gulati is a writer and illustrator of comic books and graphic novels. He enjoys telling engaging, entertaining, and soulful stories on a variety of themes. He has published graphic works with Pratham Books, Puffin, and Penguin Random House. So over to both of you.
Yeah, hello again. For those of you who stayed back from the previous session, Nikhil has just gone to get his book. So we'll start in a minute. Should I ask the same question that I asked the previous time? How many of you actually like history? And the rest of you don't? Okay, we'll try to make this an interesting session, but it is all about history, so just bear with us. But it's stories about history.
It's okay, even I didn't like history at all when I was about that age. Yeah, really. All I thought history was chapter 5, go to the back of the chapter, question number 1 is on page number 30, line number 4 to 8, just underline it. That's what I thought history was. But then later I figured out that there's a lot more to it. And it's actually really fun. So how do we do this? Okay, so I'll just quickly talk about my book. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's a comic book. Do you guys read comic books? Everybody? No? But a lot of people do. What kind of comic books do you guys read? Tintin? What else? I can't hear. One by one. Tintin? Garfield? Rings of Fire?
Huh? Tintin.
Tintin also, okay. Anybody reads Asterix? Yeah, I like Asterix also. Do you guys read manga? Yeah? Naruto? Okay, that's cool. So at least a lot of comic book fans and some history fans. You love books? Okay, excellent. So my book is basically a comic book, but it talks about people who lived 5,000 years ago. Yeah, you know about Indus Valley Civilization? What do you know about it? They lived in Peru? Okay, not exactly Peru, around 10,000 kilometers away from Peru. They lived in what is today Punjab and Haryana and Rajasthan and Gujarat and parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan. That's the area where they lived. But do you guys know why it's interesting? Why do we study about Indus Valley? No? Yes. Yeah, that's right. But why is it interesting? Why is it special? Yeah? Yeah, they were advanced civilization. They had a lot of good things. They liked having good things at home, like the things they used, their clothes, their tools, their things in the kitchen, their houses, they're all nice. But do you also know that these people had no warfare? Did you guys know that? Yeah? You knew that? What do you know?
In our school, our SST teacher told that Indus Valley civilization was a loving civilization.
Was a loving civilization?
Because many of the archaeologists didn't found any weapons there.
Yeah. I don't know if they were loving, but there was no warfare. People are people. Some people are nice, some people are not nice. Sometimes they get angry and they do bad things, yes.
Indus Valley civilization was a quite different civilization from other civilizations because it was a well-planned grid civilization. It was only formed in grids, squares and rectangles.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So a lot of people know about it. So that's what my book is about. And there's a narrator in the book who takes you around. Oh, there's some visuals from the book here. So while we talk, we'll keep showing some visuals from both my book and from Devika's books. So you can check them out over here. So yeah, there's that narrator who takes you around the ruins today to Mohenjo-daro and Harappa and Dholavira, and he talks about what it was like. And then we keep going back and forth in time. So we go back in time 5,000 years and we look at how people were living back then. So that's what this book is about. Devika, you want to speak about your books? I'm very curious to know about your books.
Yes, so I think you can see some of the book covers also coming along with this. So basically there are 3 books in the Queen series. This is the first book, which is called Queen of Ice. And this is about a queen called Didda who ruled Kashmir in the 10th century CE for around 50 years, 50. But you will not really hear about her really when you read histories of the country. And she was really remarkable because she gave Kashmir a period of peace and prosperity that it has never seen before or since. She also had to face a lot of problems, obstacles before ruling. One is very obvious. What is it? What do you think it is? What's the main problem that she would have faced, yeah? That she's a woman, exactly. And in early times, the throne always went to the male. And she was a woman who's challenging that and sitting on the throne and ruling. The other problem that she had to face is that she was lame. Thank you. Do you know what it means when you say somebody is lame? Yeah? The person can't walk, exactly. So Didda had a deformed foot. She couldn't walk on her own. So she needed to be carried around from place to place. And despite that, she did a wonderful job of ruling. So this is what Queen of Ice is about. Queen of Earth is about another such ruler who's very strong, very remarkable, but again has been made invisible in your histories. You will never read about her in your textbooks. Her name was Prithvi Mahadevi, and she ruled Orissa. Do you all know where Orissa is? What is called Odisha nowadays? Yes. But can you tell us where it is? Eastern India. Yes, exactly. So she ruled in the 9th century. This is before Didda. But again, and she had to face a different set of problems. Of course, she was a woman and she was ruling, so that is one problem. But the second big problem is that she was actually ruling over a kingdom that her father had conquered. He conquered a kingdom and placed her on the throne, which means that she was ruling over a set of enemies, people who did not like her. So that's the story of Queen of Earth. Queen of Fire is about somebody that you all know about or should know about, Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi. Do you know anything about her? Have you heard this name? Can you tell me what you know about her?
The thing I knew about her, that she was the only woman fighter who fought for India, apart from all the men fighters such as Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and Gandhiji and many more.
Okay, thank you. But yes?
Was she born in Rajasthan?
Well, no, not really, but we'll come to that. Do you know where Jhansi is? Have you been to Jhansi? Has anybody here been to Jhansi? You've been? You've been. Can you tell us a little bit about it? You were very young. Okay. Yeah?
She was called Manu by her friends, and she loved to learn, like, read and everything. But her friends believed, her mother, her parents, that she was destined to be a queen and married her at a very young age. Her and the king had a son, but he passed away after 1 year. And when they adopted, the day after they adopted the son, even like the king passed away. So she was left to rule the kingdom. And it was very challenging for her to rule as a woman because people supported her, but other kings were constantly like
targeting her because she was a woman.
Excellent answer. And all of you, thank you for answering. But basically, she was one of the remarkable women who fought against the British. It's exactly what I was saying. Your textbooks give you the impression that she was the only one. By no means was she the only one. She was one among many, but you only hear about her because she keeps coming up in the narrative. She's too big to ignore. But there's several more who've been left out of the narrative because the historian who writes history or the person who writes your textbooks decides that this person is not as important as that person, which is why you only end up hearing about her. And she ruled over Jhansi. She ruled at a very young age because her husband passed away. Her child also passed away, so she adopted this boy called Damodar. But the British were trying to take her throne away from her, so it was a constant tussle between her and the British. This is all known. All this is known about her. What I have done in Queen of Fire is to look at the other angle totally, to look at her as a woman, because as I said in the previous session, too often Rani Lakshmibai of Jhansi is seen as a superwoman, a woman who was almost like a goddess, who could do no wrong, who had no doubts, who was full of courage. Yes, she was full of courage, but she was also a human being who had her share of doubts and worries, whether she was taking the right decisions while dealing with the British, whether she was going to be able to form a bond with her adopted son, Damodar. It's also about this boy who's adopted, comes into the palace, has to deal with life in the palace, a new mother, and he doesn't know what's going to happen in the future. So it's more about her life, her personal life, rather than what we know about her. So I hope you do get to read all 3 books, or at least a few books in this series, because they will tell you about characters and approaches to characters that you're not going to read about in your textbooks. You wanted to say something? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you wait for the mic? And this group over here, can you just please listen to what's being said, because it might be your turn to speak, and then I'm sure you'll want people to listen to you as well.
Rani Lakshmibai actually adopted a son because the British had made a rule. If there was nobody to inherit the kingdom after the king or the queen died, the kingdom would pass over to the British. So she had adopted a son so that the kingdom would pass on to him instead of going over to the British.
Excellent, yeah. Okay, this is turning into...
Ma'am, but the British did not, the British refused to accept the adopted son
Absolutely.
as the real son of Rani
She
Lakshmibai.
adopted this boy because the British said that if you didn't have a natural born heir to the throne, we will take over your throne. And she adopted this boy and said, he is my son, but the British refused to recognize him. So her whole battle with the British was she wanted to keep her kingdom of Jhansi from going to the British, and so that Damodar could inherit this kingdom. What happens in the end is something that you either know from history or you can find out by reading my book. Yeah, so Nikhil, back to your book, which I must say is one of the most refreshing and intelligent ways of approaching the Indus Valley civilization that I have actually come across, that specifically targets your age group, because it's not only strictly factual when it needs to be, but it's also very richly imaginative. In delightful ways. Like he has this whole section about, an adventurer who decides to board a ship that's going trading to Mesopotamia, and then he decides to figure out what he's going to do the rest of his life there. So again, as I said before, history is about people. And this is exactly what his book is about. It's about people and approach through art. So Nikhil, you said that you did not like history in the beginning, like a lot of people here. So what actually drew you to history from a point when you didn't like it at all?
So I think I didn't like it in school, basically. But I have a feeling that I had a sense of history already as a kid. I think I had told you about this a little bit, maybe. But I remember when I was about 6 or 7 years old, I grew up in Delhi. And in my neighborhood, I remember it's basically just all houses everywhere. And I remember one day I was standing on the rooftop with my dad, and we were looking out. And as far as the eye could see, it's just houses and houses and houses and streets and buildings and like that. And then my dad said, do you know that when I was your age, this all used to be fields and forests? And this was the first time that I had realized that, okay, things were different in the past, really? 30 years ago, before I was born, everything was different? I didn't even realize that it was. And that kind of made me interested. And then I thought, okay, if 30 years ago it was so different, what about 300 years ago? And then what about 3,000 years ago? You know? And you can keep going back and back and back, and it was different. And then that kind of really opened my brain and my mind, and I realized that, okay, history is something interesting. The second thing that I used to find very fascinating was, I remember in Delhi there's a lot of historical monuments and forts and stuff like that. And I remember even as a kid, I used to go to a fort, and it would be like a playground. It's like I want to run around, look through the windows, you know, check out all the rooms. Wherever the gate is closed and there I see stairs going up, that's the only place I wanted to go up. You know, if there's a wall, I want to climb the wall. And then while I was doing, and I've been chased by guards at the old fort in Delhi and also been caught because I opened one gate that was not supposed to be open, and I climbed the wall. And I remember when I used to do this, I used to always think that, okay, this place is 500 years old, fine. So what if I was here 500 years ago, standing in the same room or in the same palace or on the same wall, what would I have seen then? People definitely would not be wearing clothes like us. People would have been wearing different clothes. People maybe would have been eating different type of food. You know, people would have been doing different things. The way people made art or music was different. And then did people also think differently? Probably, right? The way people think about things like, what does it mean to, what is the meaning of a family? What does friendship mean? And what do I want to do when I grow up? What did a kid think 500 years ago they wanted to be when they grew up? So all those kinds of things I used to imagine, but I didn't have answers. And that's kind of what brought me to history and got me interested in history and got me to exploring. Yeah, so that's how I got into it. It took some time, but I'm glad that it did. What about you? What brought you to history? Have you have you been into it since a long time, or?
Yeah, so what got me to history was a very different kind of trajectory, because I love to read, and when I was your age, I used to read anything and everything that I could lay my hands on. And I discovered historical fiction, which is basically stories that have some element of history in them, like it could be about a particular historical period or a person or a place. And I used to read historical fiction from all around the world. We had a fantastic library at school. And I loved it. And that's how I realized that, okay, this is something really interesting. It's about stories. It's about people, you know, and which really resonated with me. But when I reached the 10th class, I only knew two things about myself. I was hopeless in maths and science and very good in English and history, with no idea what I was going to do with that. But eventually, to cut a long story short, I have ended up doing my two favorite subjects all through my life, English and history, because I studied history. I studied it for years, so I have my doctoral and postdoctoral degrees in it. And each time, it's a journey of discovery. It is so incredibly interesting and amazing. And I would tell those of you who are struggling with the same problem that we struggled with in school, which is the boring textbooks, please don't get discouraged by that. Read beyond your textbooks.
Yeah, like
Find
these books.
out, buy these books or get them from in your libraries to read. And you will find that history is not just a string of dry facts and a string of names about people you do not know and you don't care to know, but it's actually about people exactly like you who might just be removed from you in terms of time or space, but they're actually exactly like you, thinking about, worrying about things, wondering about their future. Like, in fact, in your book, you have this very interesting, again, a section on this family of coppersmiths that decides to migrate from a village into one of the main sites of the civilization to improve their prospects. So this little child in the family is worried because she doesn't know whether when she goes to this new place, will she make friends? Who will she play with? What is she going to do? How are they going to live? And it's exactly like this with you. If your parents today decide to move to another city, you're going to have exactly those worries. So if you put it back to that time and you think people were going through this all through life. So that's how history should be approached. That's what brought me to history.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I find very fascinating, that, you know, even if things were different outwardly, deep inside people were the same. They were feeling the same kinds of things. They always had the impulse to survive.
Yeah.
They had always have the feelings of love and companionship and family. And at the same time, they also had this creative urge to create something interesting, to not get bored, to play games. And also the negative side. They also felt anger, they also felt jealousy, they also felt, other feelings, which is basically exactly like us. And
Humans,
in fact,
in
the migration story where the kid is wondering if she will make friends when she moves to the new place is kind of based upon my thing also, because my family moved around a bunch. And whenever I went to a new school, I always, first thing was, what are the people going to be like? What are the other kids going to be like? Will they be nice to me? Will I make friends with them or not? So it's, those feelings are very universal. And in fact, that's what makes history interesting to me. People who are just like us, but living in a different time. Like, for example, Prithvi Mahadevi in your book, she's one of the most beautiful characters. Like, I find her absolutely fascinating. And I think the way you've depicted her, where she goes to this new place, again wondering what it's going to be like. Will people like her or not? And then she's made the queen of that place, and she's unsure. And actually, the ending is a very beautiful twist. Like, it came very unexpected to me how that book ended. One of my questions is, you've written your books in the first person narrative. So you get into their heads and you write, it's the characters who are telling their story. So Prithvi Mahadevi tells the whole story of her life. How do you get into their heads? To the heads of people who lived centuries ago, 1,000 years ago, they haven't left behind any autobiography or anything. So how do you cross that bridge?
Yeah, so as I said, the further back in time you go, the lesser are your sources. So you actually, if you want to write histories of these people or stories of these people, you have to be both a detective and a psychologist. But then you also have to write history that is accurate, that is factual, and not have somebody turning around tomorrow and saying, what have you made up? Like, you can't just decide from your imagination that, this is what I'll make this character. So it has to be based on whatever facts you have and whatever with the society and polity and times they lived in. For Prithvi Mahadevi of Queen of Earth, which you were talking about, there are only 2 inscriptions that are the sources for her, that she's donating land to some other woman, in which she makes a series of comments about her rule, and that's about it. And then you have a silence about her in the records of the dynasty that she is actually ruling over, the kingdom that she's ruling over. So I had to just put all of that together and figure out who was this woman. Why I write in first person is because, you know what first person is, right? When you use the word I, when you are the person. It's because it brings me very close to the character I'm writing about. So I can slip into her head and try and figure out what life would be if suddenly I woke up one morning and my father told me, you are ruling over our rival kingdom. So you better figure out how to do that. All of you can think about it, like you put yourself into her head and figure out, and she has to prove to her father that she's worthy of being selected over her brother to rule that throne.
Yeah, like if you were sent to a different country and be told that, okay, now you're the prime minister of, let's say, China.
Yeah, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because you have to think on your feet. And, she pretty much had to think on her feet. So that's why I like to write in first person, even in the case of Queen of Ice and, the character of Didda, who's actually a little ruthless, and very ambitious. She's a very harsh person, actually quite different from the way I am as a person, I like to think. But I managed to get into her head, because if you think about a person's situation long enough, you can actually slip into their heads. But, coming to art, the one thing I used to hate in school is when teachers used to say, okay, sit down and draw something from this scene, or, draw something from this book, or illustrate book covers, because I hated drawing. I cannot draw. Even now when my publishers ask me, what would you like as the covers of your books? I have no clue, because it's the illustrator who decides that. I don't have any inputs apart from saying research says this, that, and the other. So, approaching history through art to me is something so fascinating and so interesting. So can you tell us a little bit about that, the whole process where you imagine the Indus Valley civilization and then you depict that not through words but through art? So are there any, what are the advantages and disadvantages, if any, of approaching this through art?
The advantages, disadvantages are there, but mostly the reason I do it is because it's fun.
Okay.
You know, like I was saying that when I was a kid and I used to go to forts and I used to try and imagine what it used to be like here, I wanted to see that. I wanted to see it visually. And when history books talk about, oh yeah, this king used to rule over, let's say, Patliputra, you know, Ashoka is there in Patliputra. Show me Patliputra. Can you do that? Like, I can't imagine it because I don't know what did the houses look like? What did the streets look like? If I went to a school in Patliputra 2000 years back, what would that be like? Would we have a blackboard and chalk?
Yeah.
Or what would we be doing? So that to me was interesting. And history therefore was always very visual to me. I wanted to see the coins. I wanted to see the pottery, the artwork. So I wanted to depict that. And even especially with Indus Valley, nobody had really done that visualization. So I wanted to go and depict those things for the first time. The advantages I think are that you get kind of sucked into it. If you show a scene standing on the rooftop in Mohenjo-daro, you kind of get the feeling that you are there. So that kind of involvement is there. The disadvantages, of course, is that you have to think of every little detail, every small thing. If you're showing a street, you can't just show it empty. So you have to start imagining what was going on, what kind of vehicles, were there shops, were people sitting down on the ground or were they standing up, did they even have chairs? So things like that, which kind of forces you to think a little bit extra and forces you to go back and research a little bit more and figure out, yeah, what would a street look like? What kind of animals would I have seen there? So yeah, I do it mostly because it's fun. Okay. And I've always been interested in drawing. Like as a kid, I was always drawn to drawing. And it was one of the few things that nobody told me that do this. Okay. Or you know, when you come home after the exams, nobody asks you what marks did you get in art. Nobody asks. Everybody asks what did you get in science and you know, mathematics and English and all that. Nobody cares. Art, you got an A, yeah, whatever. Big deal. So I like that. I like there was no pressure ever. And I did it for myself. So yeah. And also because history hasn't really been done visually too much.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's fun to do something new and push the boundaries a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think? Would you prefer reading a graphic book such as his on the Indus Valley, or would you like reading historical fiction set in the Indus Valley? Yeah? Both. That's the correct answer. Full marks for that. Also curious, has anything changed? Do you still, even if you get A in drawing in art, does it matter or does it not matter? It doesn't matter. Nothing has changed, Nikhil, from our time.
Good. That's great. Then people can just do art with no pressure. No pressure to perform. Art is like that. It doesn't matter what it looks like. The process of doing it is fun for me.
Yeah, that is true. You wanted to say something? Is there a mic? Oh, okay, sorry. This person first.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask something.
Yeah, go ahead.
About Rani Lakshmibai. I just wanted to ask that who ruled after the Mehender, the Rani Lakshmibai's son?
Do you think that Damodar actually ruled the throne of Jhansi?
Yes, I think so.
You think so? Okay, now what you need to do is you need to go and read Queen of Fire, or you need to look up histories and find out what happened to Damodar after Rani Lakshmibai. Then you'll get to know.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Even I'm wondering.
Yeah, all of you read the Queen series. Yes?
So actually, I am an artist. So like I love drawing, and marks in art actually matter to me because like I love doing something, and if I score bad in one of my hobbies, then that would matter to me because it's my hobby and I enjoy doing it and I devote time to it.
That's nice. But what about your parents? Do they also ask you about your marks
Yes,
in
they
art?
do matter excited about my marks in art because like I go to classes and I show them my artworks. So if I scored bad in art, they will be like, you draw so nicely. What happened in school? Why did you draw like this?
You know what we would say is follow your heart. Both of
Yeah.
us did. He followed his heart. He loved art. Look at where it's got him today. I loved writing. It started off as a hobby for me, and I followed it, and look at where it has got me today. So whatever you
Yeah.
really love to do and you enjoy doing, just do it.
Yeah, no matter what somebody else says.
Yeah.
Listen to them, but then just do whatever you want to
Yeah.
When you write, like, you write in first person all of your stories. So, like, do you actually imagine yourself to be that person and write an autobiography of yourself?
Well, you know, you have to be that person in order to write accurately about that person. So I actually had to, I learned a lot about myself while writing, say, Queen of Ice, because Queen of Ice I've actually written from the point of view of two people. One is the Queen Didda, who is very ruthless, impatient, harsh, ambitious, who can even kill if she's, if need be. The other person is a very gentle, soft character, who thinks before she acts. And I discovered that when I was writing about Didda, those parts actually flowed. I found it very easy to write. And I actually struggled a bit with the other softer person, which made me wonder whether I'm actually not what I think I am. Am I actually very murderous and ruthless? Or am I actually, not that? And I just managed to get into her head.
But as a reader, I must say that all of your books flowed very nicely.
Thank you
and
so much,
And they
Nikhil.
built up. Like the tension gets more and more and more. Even though, like for example, in Queen of Earth, she's not ruthless. She's actually thoughtful and she's thinking about all perspectives.
Yeah.
And she's trying to get everybody on board.
Yeah.
But there was still movement for me as a reader.
Yeah.
I'm sure as a
Yeah.
writer, the experiences might have
Yeah,
been
it
different.
is different. And this brings me to a question. When I write my stories, I think about it a lot in my head. I've done research on these women for many, many years. But when I actually write, I write very fast. So it doesn't take me too much time to actually put that in paper because it's been in my head for so long. But when you, for instance, you make, in fact, his book has these beautiful drawings of the artifacts of the Indus Valley civilization, really stunning. All the pots and the seals and the figures. So how long does it actually take you to capture that? Like, what is the process? Do you go to museums, observe something for days, and then you sit down and you draw it? And how long does that process take?
Yeah, my process is quite slow actually of writing, and my writing and research go together. So as I start, I research a little bit, and then I have some thoughts, and then I start writing. And as I'm writing, new questions come up. Like this question that, for the Indus Valley, my big question that came up was, why did these people not build pyramids?
Yeah.
Because this is the same time as Egypt when those guys are building those giant pyramids. So that question kind of, it was there, but it wasn't clear in my head. And it only became clear when I started writing the book. And when I started wondering, okay, what is the big question that makes me so curious about Indus Valley? And that was that, why are these people not building such big pyramids? What else are they doing? And they're doing actually some really creative things, which I discovered. So my writing process kind of goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. In fact, there were several pages that I had illustrated and completed, which I had to discard and start over again. Like about 30 pages I had drawn of the book, and then I just totally discarded it, started all over again. Regarding the artifacts and the drawings, yeah, it's a long process because I wanted to show not just the stuff that's commonly seen. Like for example, the priest king and the dancing girl, they're very famous and everybody has seen it. So I wanted to dig through and look for other artworks that nobody sees. And for that, you have to sometimes sit through like 600-page, 800-page excavation reports.
Yes.
Where they have pages upon pages of all the pieces of pottery. Like this is one of the pieces of pottery. This is another piece of writing. But these kinds of pieces are there buried inside these books. Like out of 1,000 pieces of pottery, maybe 900 are not that interesting. But 100 are interesting, and then there are a few like 10 or 20 that are just stunning. And those are the ones I wanted to pick out. So I had to go through that because not a lot of people have done that. Those excavation reports and they are there in textbooks, but nobody has brought it up. Like this is another one. And I just found those deer absolutely beautiful. So I was like, I have to show this. Here's another carving of a boat that's literally from 4,500 years ago. So yeah, it's a bit of a slow process. It's a mask. That's a mask. That's a little puppet mask, a hand mask.
Yeah.
So they would have done plays and stories through these kinds of things.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have some pottery.
So,
yeah.
just how much time do we have? Because do we have time for some more questions? Yeah, let's just take 2-3 questions.
Get
because
some
we've
new
run out.
kids.
Yeah, maybe
somebody
you
who
could,
hasn't asked already.
Somebody who hasn't asked or said anything before?
Yeah.
You? Yeah?
Ma'am, what are the sources that you had used to research about your story and the historical sources, and did you get attached to the characters while you were researching about them?
A very intelligent question. Very, very intelligent. Thank you for that. Did I get attached to the characters? Yes. Now, Didda of Queen of Ice is actually part of my soul. I mean, I'm very, very attached to her, and I'm upset that she isn't better known. The same with Prithvi Mahadevi. I now look at Rani Lakshmibai from a very new light. The sources which I consulted for Didda of Queen of Ice, there are a couple of coins she issued. There are a few damaged sculptures that remain. And there is this text called the Raj Tarangini, which is basically a historical record of Kashmir written in Sanskrit in the 12th century. These are the only sources. For Prithvi Mahadevi of Queen of Earth, as I said, there's only 2 inscriptions she issued, a big silence in the records of the kingdom that she ruled over, and a couple of stray references in the dynasty that her father belonged to. So you put that together. This, I had the opposite problem. There were too many sources for Rani Lakshmibai, Queen of Fire, but all the sources showing her to be this larger-than-life figure, nothing about her as a woman, as a mother, as a human being who's worried, who's nervous, who's anxious. So that's I had to keep aside, I had to bury under all that, information, get out the facts that mattered. Any other? You haven't said it. Yeah, you in front.
Do you ever get so attached to a character that you implement some of its qualities into your daily life?
Only the executions.
I would like to think that today if somebody said, go and rule over some place, I could do it. I already know I can't. So I'm nothing like my characters. But I would like to be, yes, they had resilience, they had courage, they had staying power, they had the ability to negotiate with people who were trying to topple them off the throne because they were women. And this is very important to all of us because we're dealing with the same kind of gender discrimination even today. Even today, there are lots of people who will tell you you're a girl, you can't do this. Or this is a profession that a girl should do, therefore don't do that. So again, it's different issues with the same kind of contest. Yeah? One more question, last question.
Everybody talk about art, but I would like to ask that do you feel that art is also like an emotion?
I think Nikhil is best equipped to answer that question.
Yes, art is very much an emotion. And I love drawing by hand because, when you draw by hand, you can stretch things, you can squeeze things, you can give expressions, you can give feelings to the figures. Like if I'm showing somebody walking and they're feeling very nervous, I'm going to exaggerate it and I'm going to make them walk like this, Or if they're feeling confident, they're going to walk like this. And I can stretch the figures, I can make them smaller. Because I'm drawing by hand, it's not a photo or something. So I love that about art, that they can be very expressive. So yeah, it becomes emotional, And like even lines, like if a line is harsh and squiggly, it shows energy. If it's soft and flowy, it seems a bit soft, like it gives a softer emotion. So that kind of a thing you can play around with art. Yeah.
So last question to somebody who has not asked any questions
This
before.
one, this girl in glasses, she hasn't asked.
Yeah.
So, sir, basically you said that the biggest question was that why didn't the Indus Valley people in the civilization never make pyramids? So did you ever get the answer to that question?
Yeah, I got some sense for the answer. Of course, I didn't get the exact answer because I was not present and nobody who lived 5,000 years ago is still there today to tell me. But a little bit of an answer I got, which was, I will summarize, which was that, suppose you have 10,000 people, like suppose you have 10,000 students and all of you have to do one task. let's say you have to, what will you do? Let's say you are given some things and you have to build a room. Okay? Suppose all 10,000 of you have to get together and build a big room. How are you going to go about doing that? Who is going to do what? How will you decide what needs to be done? Where will you build it? How big it will be? What kind of materials you will use? Who will pay for it? So all these decisions will have to be taken. But how do you get together 10,000 people? If there were 10 of you, okay, you could sit in a circle, talk about it and do it. But if there were 10,000 people, how are you going to do it? It's challenging, right? So a lot of societies, what they do is they make somebody the leader. There's somebody in the middle who will kind of decide. Maybe they will take the opinions of some more people, but only a few people will decide what is to be done and the rest of them will just do it. So you will tell, okay, all of you, you go and get the bricks from over there. All of you, you start digging over here. Okay, somebody will tell. And so normally what happens when there is somebody sitting in the middle like a king is that they also become powerful because they're telling everyone what to do. So what they'll do is they'll also start taking, resources and wealth from everybody. And the kings will start becoming rich and richer and richer and richer. And suddenly you have a king who has a whole big palace and then everybody else just lives in normal mud houses or something. Right? That's what happens a lot of times. So it's these kings who have a lot of wealth and money and power who are building these pyramids. Who is telling everyone, okay, you get all the stones, pile them up over here. And when I'm dead, I'm going to be buried inside this pyramid. In the Indus Valley, they came up with different solutions. They came up with not this idea that somebody has to sit in the middle. They came up with this idea that you have smaller groups. So 10,000 people will be divided into, let's say, 100 groups of 100 people each. And each group will decide for themselves and think about it for themselves. What do they need? What do they want? How are they going to do it? What can they bring to the picture? And then out of those 100 groups, we will get together and then all of them together will decide. And therefore, there was nobody to build pyramids. There was nobody who needed to sit at the center with all the money, who wanted to show off to everyone else and build a pyramid. That's roughly the answer that I found.
And thank you, and that wraps up the session.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Nikhil and
thank
Devika.
you everyone
That was
who
lovely
stayed.
insight
Beautiful
into history.
questions.
Yeah, and thank you for sitting patiently and asking so many questions. We have some chocolates on the gate, so if you're going out, you can do that. Or there's a PG Woodhouse discussion now, so you can sit down and watch that too. Thank you so much, Nikhil and Devika. Okay, they are coming here to distribute the chocolates, so please.